We will have 3 speakers, and then we will have a debate as we had before the break. And I would like to invite FALGUNI GUHARAY for the first introduction, and I hope it will be a good injection in the debate which will follow. So, go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to come all the way here and provoke you all. And thank you all to come here and get provoked. I mean, you know. So I'm going to do something for the first time in my life. I'm going to finish a talk within 5 minutes, which I've never done. And I'm not going to use a slideshow. So if I end up going a little bit more, so you know, because I've failed in my market structure. Right now, while we are sitting here, and we'll probably finish about 4 o'clock, give and take another 2 hours, in Nicaragua, there will be a very special event. The Ministry of Agriculture, in representation of the government, will be presenting to a very wide audience in a very big event its policy on how to promote the agroecological production of small-scale farmers in Nicaragua in the next 5 years. Now, you can call it an election stunt because the elections are coming. You can call it populist policy, but if you really go through that little document of 6-7 pages, and it's quite impressive to see that how they have been able to pick up on the things that we have been looking at for such a long time. But I want to just you to focus on few things that are in this policy, and I'm just picked up the part of the business and commercialization. And it literally says, we meaning the policy, right? We will design a marketing plan to position the small farmers' agroecological products in our and our neighbors' markets. We will push for innovative ways of commercialization through auctions, farmers' markets, fairs, whatever it needs to take. There will be local and national certification to specially position our small farmers and their products. There will be a national strategy for education about the benefits of the small farmer agroecological products. Permanently will inform the public and private sector through market intelligence about the products and the developments. The last one is quite classic, and it's incredible. It says, we'll promote the supply and consumption by obliging the state institutions like hospitals, army, and police to buy small farmers' agroecological products. Well, this is great. So he said, okay, that's done. Nicaragua has no problem. Small farmers, forget seminar, forget the title, you got it. We'll have to see what happens. But if you go back in a document that was published in 2009 by the World Food Programme, when they looked at the food security situation and looked at the different initiatives they picked up on Nicaragua, and they put that there was a really innovative agri-seed program, there is improvement in value chain, and they especially emphasized on a productive food program that is financed by the government since 2007, that is reaching out to 75,000 poor women farmers so that they can capitalize with the cattle and this and then become really active actors in the local food economy. And then medium-term investment to improve the seed supply and technology. So one would say, okay, if we are really interested about the policy environment, about small farmers, agroecological movement, whatever it is, well, this will be a nice case to look at. But this same policy structure has another side of the coin that we are not really reading, right? It says in the 7th, 8th point that we'll adhere to all the commitments that we have made to the free trade agreements. So that means we'll stick to CAFTA, which means we'll stick to ALBA. That's the trade agreements that will go on in the countries. And we'll stick to agreement of Acuerdo de Association agreement with European countries. So I will take next 3 minutes just for you to case 2 case studies very quickly. Let's talk about corn. We talk about food, that's what we eat every day, tortillas. So the corn production is a vital part of the economy of Nicaragua. Between 2000 and 2007, the production has increased from 350 to 500,000 metric tons. So it's quite big. Although the yield has not increased, so people have been planting more areas for these government programs or whatever it is. So you can say that production has gone up. The domestic consumption has gone up from 260,000 metric tons to 350. So sounds good. It goes up the production and consumption goes up. And per capita consumption has gone up. So it means people are getting a little bit of money to buy a little bit more maize. I don't know where from. Maybe from remittance, maybe from wherever it is, but they are. But importation of corn, I mean, this is strange. I mean, you produce corn and you, but the importation of the corn has gone up from 20,000 metric tons to 140,000 metric tons. Is it, where is this coming from? 7%. I mean, 7 times. And the corn flour, processed corn flour to make tortillas rocketed from 10,000 to 40,000. And especially from Maseca, Gruma, this is a Mexican United States capital. You have to remember Nicaragua has a free trade with Mexico, has a free trade with United States. So you can do a double triangling. I mean, that is 3 times as effective as free trade. And Maseca is GMO, and that's confirmed by Greenpeace in Mexico. And Nicaragua has a policy of not importing GMO food. So, I mean, how is this happening? And this has been very clearly written up as an excellence of CAFTA. In United States Embassy page, you can go and look at it, and it's very big. And people say, well, that's great, because the consumers are much better because the price has gone down. So December 2008, the price was 30 cents, 37 cents. In August 9, it was 58 cents, and now it's 48 cents. So prices have not gone down. So is the free trade just mining into all other kind of thing that we just elaborated? Now let's look at what is going to come. In Nicaragua has been working with the help of NGOs, Europeans, Finland, whoever it is, the sustainable dairy production. And we have had a conversion of sustainable dairy production into quality, into agroforestry system and everything. So our production has gone up in 2007 about $110 million of products to about 272 in 2009. We're talking about jumping up 100%. We produce about 600,000 tons of metric ton of products, and 90% of the product, not all, 90% of our export goes to the region. But strangely, all the imports come from outside the region, New Zealand and wherever it is, and even from Europe. Now, whoever has seen the association, they will find out that we were forced, this is forced, to accept entrance of at least 600 tons of milk products from Europe, even with subsidy, without any tariff. It was a precondition. So we'll be accepting 600 metric tons, and it goes up by 5% every year since eternity. So in 50 years' time, we could import all our production from Europe and cheaper. So if you just do the triangulation of 600 metric tons into Nicaragua, and Nicaragua doing a sweatshop of maquila of cheese or something, of European cheese, and sending it to Mexico or United States, you can see a huge operation going on. And I mean, that opens up a dumping. So there would be dumping. So whole milk industry will collapse. So if you think coffee industry collapse is a problem because the small producer goes out of business, cattle industry has 15, 20 workers in each farm, and they don't even have land. So that is a serious question. Now, 2 questions. Why are we as policy sabotaging our own effort? I mean, is it because the farmers don't have any position? We fought during the CAFTA, and we fought hard, and we won. The white maize was not allowed in the CAFTA to come into free trade. What the industry did is they took the yellow maize, and it was allowed, and what they're selling us is bleached yellow maize as white flour. And that is allowed because legally yellow corn was allowed in the CAFTA. We didn't know that they had that trick behind. We only fought for white corn, and immediately it was done. What about the cheese and the milk? I mean, the few words that was written there and that triangulation will be stopped. Will it be ever stopped? Now, one can say, you know, the market is a bad guy, you know. So he doesn't let you work, you know. So the market agents are not good. The private companies are not good. Starbucks is not good. But what about governments who are sitting down in these trade agreements and signing this between Europe, between Nicaragua, between Mexico? I mean, these are not some dark, you know, kind of in some hidden agenda. This is open. And this is your and mine tax money and your and my lives. So do the small farmers. They need to really get organized and expose this and say, this is not about few pennies here and there. It's about taking the system right to where we want. So trade agreements, I think, has been avoided as an incidence issue. And we have just thought about negotiating or bargain on a little bit. And I think the profile of small farmers really, or the markets working for the poor, the first stop has to be trade agreements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think those who raise the issue of policies being overlooked, this is, I think, quite some provoking information from Nicaragua to encourage further thinking. Before we start the debate, we will have two more persons providing their provocation. Diego MUÑOZ.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. When I started to do up my ideas to provocate, my question was, who am I going to provocate? The farmers, the Bolivian government, the intellectuals from the northern universities, ourselves. So my questions, for some of you, can be provocative, for some of you don't, or some of them who are watching us at the network will be more provocative than you. The issue I would like to talk about is this issue of agency of small producers and the relationship with the policy processes. Well, I come from Bolivia, and Bolivia has suffered many important changes in the last decade or so. In the past, before Evo Morales' government, we had many development programs supported by international cooperation and worked out by the national government. But these programs, in many cases, did not work, and did not work especially with small producers. So it was very clear that when public policies were going in one direction, social movements were going in a completely different direction, and they met on the blocking on the roads because the public servant couldn't go anywhere because the campesinos were blocking the roads. So this is a very clear case of not finding the way that policies can solve the problem. And NGOs and international cooperation have been very much engaged in not finding their way out. And after Evo Morales became president of the country, there was a really split between the national policies and the international cooperation. International cooperation doesn't know what to do today. So why is the reason of this? Why this has happened? I will focus on small producers, and my interpretation, and from many of the people that we are discussing this, it had to do with that the national policies and the international cooperation policies, and also the organization policies, were more related to pushing and working over the big issues, which were related to the way their organizations had to carry the problems and had to see how they would implement a certain policy. It doesn't matter where does the policy comes from. So it was a very driven policy to get to the collective issues. So small producers, I think, all over the world have these two tensions that they have to fight all the time. One is the collective perspective, being a collective body through their organizations, because it's not easy to compete if you are by yourself. It's not easy to do nothing by yourself because you are a small producer. You have to have a collective body, but you have very, very single and very clear individual necessities in terms of markets and in terms of production. So these two tensions are always present in any small producer's business. So what happened in the past is that all the energy of the policies and of the cooperation programs, they got into the collective issues, and they tried to, through the collective issues, change the things of small producers. And they didn't get into the small issues that had to do with who I'm going to sell, how much I'm going to sell, when I'm going to sell, what I'm going to do with the money I earn. Is it money for my kids going to school, or is it I'm going to reinvest it for my production? So those personal decision issues were not touched at all by any or cooperation program or national policies or even the leaders of the organizations. Well, because of that, many of the small producers, they got very well organized and decided to throw out the government because they wanted a more representative government, and they were able to change the system, and now a small coca producer is Bolivian president. So we thought that this problem was going to get solved, and he was going to be able to watch at both ends and see what's going to happen at the macro level and what's going to happen with the micro level, because he knows people very well. But the surprise for everybody is that the scheme is being the same. We have completely different policies in place. The government wants to really work with the organized institutions and the representatives of the organization from organization, because they have a political power and they are representing more people, but they do not go down deep to see what the real market problems are from those small producers. Even the coca producers, they have this problem of price change and how to get into the market individually, how to transport their product. So this is a matter of agency. So the conclusion about this is that even it can be a neoliberal government where all the policies come from the outside, or it can be a popular government, a very left-wing government, very close to Chavez. They are aware that they have to work with the organization and the big picture, but they don't know how to put policies in place that can work really on the individual-based interest that has to do with their agency, that has to do with their day-to-day decisions, and those policies are not even discussed. People speak, it's easier and more comfortable to speak about big things related to big organizations than to speak how are we going to help people to manage the small amount of cash they have, how are they going to manage their cash flow, who is going to advise them on that, how is that decision going to be taken. So that part is not being looked at all, and I think that if that doesn't change, perhaps the road blocking will start again quite soon, because people are not seeing that this government is doing something for their individual dreams or needs, and they see that it's only a big political picture and nothing is happening on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the third and last person, Mohamed Shariff from Uganda.
Okay, thank you very much. Just building from what Diego said, when you talk about the value chains, where do we put the household, so-called small producer? What is their stake in it? Analysis has been done about value chains and all that, but are the small producers really involved? The information that is flying all over, is this even itself contradicting? You give prices about a certain product, but these are prices not well analyzed. They include other costs. They raise expectations of the small producers. They cultivate more products, and the prices go down. So there's kind of a clash when it comes even to the information. And there are many, many actors involved in this, and they are not coordinated. This one brings a lot of challenges, in making the small producers also to have a correct choice, what to produce. There are quite a number of dynamics also at community level, where we are looking at issues of culture, we are looking at, issues of, group dynamics. One person asked that, if you can be able to get a better price, meaning that you can get enough income But giving an example of cocoa in the Bunbuja district in Uganda, 70% or 80% of the land that is being used on cocoa, you can get the income, but the prices of food elsewhere are also increasing. When you bring in issues of culture, that's when the man decides to marry the second wife, the third wife, trying to look at, splitting that income. And in the end, it's not even enough, to sustain your family or change their livelihoods. According to the recent report, 50% of the children are malnourished in that district. And it is a district that has registered a lot of income in terms of, getting cocoa. The prices are good. They're very good players. The lead farms are there. They can provide some support in quality control, and everything has been done. The market is okay. The market environment is superb, but the livelihood is questionable. These are the issues that, where is the agency in this? How do we provide information? How do we make households or small producers, reflect on a number of issues? The choice. Looking at also the opportunities that are in Uganda, the opening up of the borders. The food prices are going up. There's a lot of demand. So people can only concentrate on these niche products and even do not analyze the alternatives, probably with even less risks. And you concentrate on these traditional crops or niche products that could be having even higher risks. People have gone into sugarcane growing. A lot of their land has been given out because they need to be paid per month. And is that enough? Many people are losing that land. And the moment you grow sugarcane, what happens to the soil? And it cannot be taken back into cultivation for any other crop for a very long time. So these are the challenges that we are looking at. The issues of the issue of governance. We may be talking about, because of the market, we need to organize farmers, we need to put them together. But again, we have not nurtured these leaders to become more proactive, to face the market realities. And that one becomes a very big dilemma for us. How, it will increase frustration, it will increase mistrust. And for them to, to interface with the companies, farms, it becomes a bit difficult. So in that way, you find that there will always be, a kind of a cosmetic picture. We have the value chains, but again, the realities at household level involving the household, involving everyone in the household, to kind of benefit from the whole chain becomes a bit of a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, as I mentioned earlier, I think the issue of policy has been well addressed by FALGUNI, saying that national policies, which are in a sense quite favorable, might not have the impact as envisaged in the context of free trade agreements. So you're questioning, the role of policies. We have said earlier it's being overlooked in the debate. You're saying, to some extent, policies are one thing. I mean, there's also the wider environment in which these policies can work or don't work. And Diego is, I think, talking about the political space which is right now there in Bolivia, but which is still not allowing to have policies which are really linked to the economic interest of small-scale producers. And Mohamed Sharif talking about, or questioning the value chain approach and whether it's really addressing poverty alleviation at the household level. So I would like to invite you all for the debate. And again, first 3 persons as a start of the debate. I saw already somebody there. Yes, and over there. Okay, we start at the left hand.
When ministers from the developing countries, they visit EU or other areas, their request, Minister of Commerce or Industries or whatever, they request for free access to markets or free trading, keeping in their mind that most of them, they are owner of those commodities or products which are exportable. While in their own countries, they are the biggest barriers. They create barriers against the access of products from the normal and layman or common population. I can give you one example. Let's say about Pakistan. There are two products, major products, agriculture products. It's wheat. We have cotton as well. And then sugar cane. Almost 99.9% of the sugar industry is owned by the ruling elites, those who are sitting in capital. Their grandfathers and then their dads and they themselves, okay, they own all those things. What happens? The poor farmers, the small farmers, when their sugarcane crops is ready, they bring it to those industries, to sugar mills, to sell it. The price which they are being offered by the mill owners is 10 times, 20 times lower than the existing market price. So what choice they have? Either they have to sell it immediately, otherwise they have to take risk to let it dry, this special crops. I mean, the weight is something, that is the value. That sugar cane after a week or 2 weeks in that high temperature, I mean, goes dry. Okay, so then they are on loss. Wheat, again, these stockholders are the rulers. They stock the wheat at the time of the harvesting, which is April, May, something. They bring out their wheat into the market. So at the same time, the growers, the small farmers, now they do not have any place, any market to sell their product. So what they have to do, they have to listen and they have to agree with the prices, which are again 50, 100 times lower than those things. So we have to discuss about one thing while we are discussing about make markets work for the poor, that in those countries, developing countries, the lust and the greed of these ruling elites and this janta, whatever they are, I mean, that we have to discuss. When you sit with them, you have to talk to them that you are asking us, demanding us for free market and free trading, but please let's talk about your own behavior and attitude that systematically you people want to keep your own public poor. That's something which need to be discussed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sietse Wellema, Wageningen University. Falguni, I'm going to give you the provocation back, I think. I got the idea from your presentation that producer agencies in setting the agenda is not really a problem. You said in the beginning that it's interesting to read in policy documents that there are policies that are apparently favorable or at least fit the perspective of smallholder producers. Then, of course, it's not always effective, but if I read the invitation to this provocation correctly, you stated that the problem is that there is a lot of talk about making markets work for the poor in absence of smallholder producers. My question is, why does the discussion then focus so much on the contents of the agenda and so little on the agency of smallholder farmers in setting the agenda? And if you follow the implication of that question, the discussion in this room could be on what then are the mechanisms that enabled farmers' organizations, cooperatives in setting the agenda. And I thought that Don Lorenzo made the argument that fair trade then was a kind of vehicle through which producers could set an agenda. And then I don't mind whether that was a very effective instrument in terms of economic benefits, but if you have the discussion on producer agency, I would like to encourage you to appreciate or at least to detect the mechanisms through which farmers were able to set the agenda and see whether you can support and replicate them.
Thank you. There was a third one, eh? Yeah.
Maybe one issue I didn't hear much yet today was the whole issue of gender. I think some of us are also member of the Agri-Pro-Focus Gender and Value Chain group. And there you always see two streams. Either on the one hand you have the gender people, on the other hand you have the value chain people. We hardly ever meet, you know. The gender people don't understand value chains. The value chain people usually don't really focus on gender-related constraints. So I think we should take that challenge as well, because here work for the poor is a bit, for me, too general. We should be a bit more specific here, I think.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask FALGUNI to respond to Siets's provocation.
My reading into the situation is that small farmers and small households, not just farmers, beyond just the commercial organization, now at least in Nicaragua and Costa Rica too, has certain amount of political clout. And it's not only related to the election or ballots, because it takes some time to really convert this organization into a social movement. So at least in Nicaragua, we have seen this grow over the last 10 years. Not only just farmers, but also water movement, the agroecological movement, the women movement, and there is a parallel growing of the social movements. And there is a lot of question about the international cooperation is now a good amount of funding is not going to the NGOs, but through the social movements, and which is very positive. But they cannot have a, like legal status to receive money, so somehow they have to do something or the other, but that's another question. But if you look at Nicaragua, nothing really big happened in the last 3 governments, because like Diego said, the doors were closed for the small farmers, even to in the table of the policy debate, national policy. Now, 2007 onwards, that has opened up. So they were invited into consultation before, but now they're invited to really do input. And if you look at this policy document that is being presented today, the draft, 3rd, 4th draft was presented by the social movement. So sometimes they're selling that the government is stealing our document, which is great. I mean, you want the government to steal your documents in terms of policy. But when it goes to the trade agreements, there is a social movement also. I mean, we want to influence, but the question is that we are protesters. They were not really participating in it, because the way they're negotiated is a completely different structure. And we said that in 1988, the problem with GATT or UNCTAD or Ronda de Uruguay was not that we need to negotiate, but the way you set up the process of negotiation will always exclude people. And in the CAFTA, the farmers' movements and social movement came in strong in Nicaragua. But we knew that we were going to lose. And if you look at the vote in the assembly, everyone voted for it, all the parties, in favor of the CAFTA. And because we knew, because both the parties had enough business in it, they saw a huge opportunity of doing business. So it's no question of moral, no question of small farmers, no question of policy, it's money. So you can make business, so let's get it done. Costa Rica was more intelligent, and they fought. And I'm glad that they have a case during the 3 days. They have actually documented the social movements of the TLC, the CAFTA movement. And you know what they got? They got 136 exclusions that we didn't get, because they waited for the 3 years and really fought the discussion. So it shows you that if you have the guts, and if you can negotiate, you can. Question is that our governments hurried up. In case of the European agreement, the social movement had 2 big issues. They wanted to get the water off the list, because I don't know if you guys know, but European Union wanted free trade of water from Central America. They wanted to buy our water free. And that was the biggest issue, that water was not for sale. And the whole energy was so much put on the water, it went under our control, that milk went from here and bread went from there, and so you couldn't control. And there were lots of small tables and negotiations, and we are not participating. So in the network that we have, I have proposed, and we have proposed, that we are not only going to look at the policy, but we are looking at the policy-making dynamics at different levels. Now, small farmers agency at the level of the trade agreement, small farmer agency at the level of local policy, small farmer agency at the level of territorial policy, it needs to be much more sophisticated and developed. Now, this is a great opportunity to alliance. But the question is that we are never going to get the trade agreements right if we don't have a social movements on this side. If you guys organize in social movements, not just farmers, but consumers, because you're going to eat and we organize in social movement, then we can sit together and see the right kind of trade agreements that will be fair. Otherwise, it will always be. Now, the question is that why are always trade agreements against? Because they were set up to do that way. The whole idea of trade agreements was to set up and to liberate the small farmers and get the industrialized agriculture, get over the scene. So my answer to your question, the agency is there, but we sometimes, Nicaragua, Costa Rica showed you that one did and one didn't. Free trade agreements with the European Union were done too quickly, too right, so we didn't get it right. And too many trade negotiation at the same time. Nicaragua is negotiating Mexico, United States, that's over. Then it was European Union, and then it's Thailand, and there's Taiwan, and then it's Panama. And after all, we are 4 million people, and there are no more than 40 people who are thinking about this. How can then you just run over? You just run over the capacity of doing this.
Yeah. Okay. One reaction. You are still talking about the social movement, no? Trying to get influence in the government agenda or the free trade arrangements. Shouldn't be that one of the added values of a value chain? That as a value chain you can organize your lobby, and then with the big farmers, small farmers, etc., and have much more impact. Because who are lobbying in the United States or in Europe for these free trade agreements? This is also the industry. So organizing or getting links within the value chain can have a massive effect on free trade, I think.
I don't know if the dialogues are permitted, but I'll respond to that. The social movement of Nicaragua is called MUNIC. It's called Movimiento de Productores y Productoras de Agricultura Orgánica. So our value chain is agroecological agriculture. That is the value chain. We don't believe in cocoa or coffee or butter. The value chain is production agroecological, which is broad. It has humans, which is equity, which is environment. So we are in a value chain, and we're in a better value chain than this little bit peanuts. And because it helps us to see the bigger picture. And you're right, we are in a value chain, but the value chain is in different level of agroecological production, and that it helps us to negotiate policies on a different level. And like if this policy come into the effect, so the hospitals not only will have to buy organic coffee, also organic rice, also organic maize, and so we have to see, because then there is a buyer in the hospital who has one of his foot down into the corruption, how to dislodge that man from his business that he had during the last 15 years. So this will all come into the position, and some government officers have kickbacks. So, but you're right, it is a value chain, but it's not that coconut or cocoa, but it's a bigger name value chain.
But I think the question is also about the actors in the value chain. How can you collaborate more effectively with the other actors to influence policies? Yeah. There was, did I see somebody? Koen? Yeah, is it on the same topic? Yeah. Okay. And then
about negotiation, but also about government policies. I think the point that is made is that smallholders normally have little vote or little strength or power in that sort of negotiations, and have little attention in government policies because of the lack of organization. And I think if it comes to chain analysis, there are quite a few chains where smallholders have a dominant position. The majority of the production comes from smallholders, and still they don't have a negotiation power because of lack of organization. Now, that lack of organization, first of all, is different over the world. I think in Asia it's stronger generally. China, Vietnam generally have a stronger organizational power at smallholder level. But Africa is extremely weak as far as I can see. And I think that all the efforts that NGOs or social movements or whatever have put in stimulating organizational capacity in Africa did somehow fail. And we are not very self-critical in that respect. We are not asking ourselves why. But we are expecting more or less in terms of inclusiveness that organizational capacity can increase without knowing how to increase it. And I feel that's a major challenge that I hope the coming days we will address in some way.
Okay, are there people over there? Yes, Joost, and then...
Maybe not go
Wait.
Koen, you're entering now area, maybe, okay, should go a little bit back. I don't think, I work now for a long time in Africa and don't think farmer organizations are weak. I've seen very good examples, and maybe I skip to that because the discussion was not about that, but maybe you can come back later to that. But maybe stop with a little bit the simplistic view on farm organizations, please. Because they are so diverse and they have so much mission. So I want to learn more about that and not about these stereotypes of, especially not on Africa.
Okay. And there was another person. Yeah.
Okay. My name is. Does it work? Noordvaart, and I work for the Royal Tropical Institute. And we are working on bringing together like the value chain framework, to call it like that, and gender work that we are involved in. So we are actually trying to indeed build the bridge between people in value chains and gender experts like the APF network is doing, what was just mentioned. And actually what we see is when we look at, for example, mechanisms that contribute to gender inequality in value chains, that is very similar to looking at why, for example, smallholders are excluded from value chains. And what we see is that a social analysis or a power analysis, if you will, is often lacking in value chain analysis. And I think that would actually be a very strong point of a value chain as a framework that allows you to look at these social issues, to look at power relations, and to look at, for example, why a farmer organization has negotiation power or not. And then, of course, you can't look only at on the level of the value chain anymore, but then you do need to look at household level, for example, what actually happens there, community level, government policy. So I think what has happened with like looking only at value chains is that indeed the broader context is something additional, while actually this broader context says something is reflected within the value chain, just like activities in the value chain are reflecting what the context is about. And I think that can't be looked at separately. And I think gender is a very good example where you see that very strongly, where actually female farmers of women who work on a farm are often not even part of discussions because we don't have that framework. We don't make the analysis. So yeah, that was a...
Okay, thank you very much. Diego, you would like to respond or react?
Not exactly to respond, but I would like to... for me, in the debate, something is missing, and it's this agency issue between organization and individual needs. We have always the tendency to go and say, you are organized or you are not organized, or you are weak organized. And I think that, as the gentleman there says, culturally, the word organization has many different manners of understanding. And for one culture, an organized group is a very unorganized group for another culture. So to put a value on that, I think it's one of the dangers, and that does not make us see where the agency problem is. So from what has happened in Bolivia in the last years, people became more committed and willing and knew what they don't wanted from the foreign political system. And they organized through their own ways of getting organized. And that was something that has nothing to do with external intervention. And they were able to have thousands of organizations that got together on a common issue and said, okay, we don't want this. We don't know what we want, but we don't want this. And that process of identifying what people don't want collectively has to do with and strengthens the individual perception of how life should be. But once this position gains power and takes the government, then it comes the same cycle again, because one thing is to understand the public issues and one thing is to really understand the individual issues. And this tension between individual needs and individual agency with the global environment, I think it's a constant thing that is going on in all societies. And we are not able to work on that tension, although we work in organization and big issues, or we work on the chains and the market and the price and something very, but we don't have the broad picture that should go together. And many times these two things have opposite tensions, and you have to see both. And I think we all are failing on that, and that's why we never can get to the small producers agenda. And I think the fair trade case is a good example of that.
Okay, thank you. I think there's something coming in from outside this room.
Okay, I have an interesting comment to Diego actually, and maybe a question for Mohamed from Uganda. A question coming from Uganda actually. It's interesting to hear from Diego that small producers in Bolivia decided to change their government in view to change policies that directly affect them. We are right now in an election period in Uganda, but farmers seem not to have any agenda to inform the leaders about what they want, but instead they are setting the vote. So maybe it's interesting to hear from Uganda what is going on there and why that might be, and what opportunities for the producers.
Okay. Thank you. Wow.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What's going on?
True, it may be correct. Well, it depends on the analysis, because if you try to make the analysis in Uganda, there are many incumbents who are, especially when it comes to the National Resistance Movement Party, a number of ministers have been thrown away. If actually they were to be given money, the same people would have surfaced. I think the issue of people are now getting more aggressive, they are becoming more analytical. There are a number of issues that are pressing them at community level, markets and all that. Many leaders have been thrown away, and there are new set of leaders. I think we have lost about 60% of the old leaders. In my own district, over 70%. So I think when it comes to issues of handouts, I don't agree. There's some level of civic competence at the moment. A lot of work has been done, and when you say organizations in Uganda are not organized, they are more organized, but depending on what they are doing. I can agree with you when it comes to markets and influencing markets with, influencing and debating on issues of markets with the government. They are still weak. They are still learning, and there's a lot of knowledge that is required for them to, to engage in that area. We have different programs like a National Agriculture Advisor Program with NADS, but it's particularly looking at production, and it's looking in two phases. At first, they had some challenges where they had a number of contractors and the whole procurement process. It was not really good, and the farmers were losing out, and now it is changing, which is an opportunity that they have to look at direct subsidies to the farmers. They have to decide what to produce and what quality of inputs they need. So there are many things that are changing, and we are trying to look at how best we can improve this agency to make sure that the number of civil society organizations or NGOs can be able to, to debate apart from the human rights issues and all that. How do they influence government on issues of markets? Here we are talking about COMESA, we are talking about East African Community, and again, we have some farmers who are producing, and especially we have a number of processors. I'll give an example of juice processors. They have to import the syrup from Egypt, from Kenya. What's happening to the pineapple farmers? They will always say they can't meet these requirements. And again, other programs from the NGOs are promoting production. So it's kind of a contradiction here. And this is something that, it needs some high-level engagement with government. And you can't do that because the policy and the agreements just say you don't have to levy any input taxes. So when you get even a product from Egypt, for example, the price is a bit cheaper than what is being produced in Uganda. The cost of production and all that, so you'll never compete. And of course, they will need to get the raw materials, which actually now can be able to compete with other products, other foreign products. It's quite complex.
Thank you. There was, okay, I think you were there first, and then we have here one person, so it's getting busy.
Yeah. On this issue of how far does value chain analysis really cater for, is it an appropriate framework? Is it good enough? I think in the research community that has already been answered, that question. Because many people have gone beyond a value chain analysis proper and go into what is called the global network school. And they recognize that there's one thing are the functional interdependencies between actors in the chain, but there is also a societal embedding and there is a territorial embedding. And that territorial embedding is then where you look at the household framework and a household participating in multiple chains, for example, which influences a lot. What is the autonomy or the dependency of that particular household? With regard to the societal embedding, one looks at issues like the role of the state, particularly state-business relationships. So the question of interest representation would be a key area where one looks into. And what else? There was something else I wanted to say, but I've forgotten it. Anyway, you can find that in the book.
Thank you.
And then finally, the question of the state. How far do we go in, what do we ask from the state? And there is where, Diego was not very clear to me. To talk about the daily necessities or the daily things of a household doesn't really tell me what is really what you ask from the state. Are you talking about an old-fashioned state that hands out all sorts of things to households and associations depending from the state to do all sorts of things? Or are we talking about a more strategic conception about what is the role of the state in enhancing small producer agency to produce in markets? And that means questions of how to organize research and development and make it work and respond to what are the questions of small farmers. That relates to questions of finance, and that relates to questions of training. And I think these are the kind of strategic issues that I would say one ought to focus on. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. You wanted?
I would like to bring something which was discussed in the previous portion, and so that you don't go back home with the message which was delivered that if farmers lose out on farming, there are better vocations for them outside. It was the example of Holland was given to us. But in India, we're a billion plus, 1.1 billion to be very specific, and there are no alternate avenues for us. So the state role in terms of smallholder is very tricky in a sense. The unemployment at the farm level, where 60% of the population is currently engaged, has led the state to develop policy for rural employment guarantee, which ensures them 100 days of employment guarantee. So this is the state response to increasing unemployment of smallholders at the rural level. So look at this one dimension of it. If you look at the economic growth model that I talked about, which is aiming at 8.5 to 10% growth, the idea for the state is to remove as many people from farming and bring them down to urban areas. Now this is so because if we have to continue to grow in the manner in which we have grown in the last few years, the mineral resources in the country would need to be mined more efficiently and more effectively, which essentially means that the smallholders, the tribal population, the bottom of the pyramid population need to be rehabilitated elsewhere. So this is another scenario which is developing, and within this scenario, which is a larger, there is a social unrest, there is a violence which is emerging in at least 1/6 of the districts in India. There's a very serious matter. So within this scenario, larger scenario, we're locating value chains. So sometimes when you look at value chains and the policy atmosphere which is coming along, you see there is quite a bit of dichotomy between the two. The policy is not supportive of the value chains, number one. And if it is supportive in a very small places. It's not a nationwide phenomena. So there are contradictions within the whole system, which then under which we have to operate, number one. And secondly, the challenge of keeping the farmers doing farming, because they're contributing to about 50% of the entire national food security, is very critical here. So therefore, all I've said before, and I want to reiterate here, is that vulnerability of the farmers is very critical here. So any amount of action that you do, if it adds to vulnerability even by 0.1, that is serious business in a place as vulnerable as India.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, Daryl.
A bit in response to Diego's presentation, I want to restate the importance of producer agency or collective action in value chains as an interesting model to look for that. Because one of the things what you saw in Bolivia, that producer organizations are very diverse, like Joost Nelen said. There are ethnic divides, ethnic defined farmers organizations, there are territorially defined farmers organizations, and there are commodity-wise or functional economic farmers organizations. When you see the process of Evo Morales' government, the economic farmers organizations have been excluded. So perhaps one of the solutions for getting better government outreach to farmers in markets is to re-engage with those farmers organizations which are tilted as neoliberal and reformed liberals, and they are really not the chosen ones of the current government.
Yes.
Talking about the agency and what has been mentioned before, I was wondering if you had invited here the president of Peru, what would he be saying? He was just at the UN boasting about the great success of his government. For several years, several governments in Peru have been trying to get all these free trade agreements with everybody, Chile, Korea, whatever, the European Union. And now he's boasting everywhere that, well, for the first time in history, poverty has reduced drastically. So the argument would go that, yes, markets work wonderfully for the poor. And the more markets, the better. So, yeah, thinking of these contradictions and the levels, and I was wondering if we're not just looking at the wrong questions, because maybe markets work for the poor, or shouldn't we be asking ourselves how to make markets work with the poor? As a different entry point.
Anybody who would like to respond? Yes? Yeah.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to make reference to this topic. You are right, the income per capita in Peru rose from $2,000 up to $6,000 per capita. And this income per capita, how has this been distributed? It's very important to take that into consideration when you study the situation. And we have to make that clear. For instance, the smallholders, and I do not only speak about coffee producers, but in general, what his yearly prices are good, then there has been a good harvest. For instance, 84% of the smallholders in Peru do not get $200 for the production per month, and they have to work, and they have also to carry out all their tasks, so they have more jobs. And on top of that, in a case of tropical products, there is also the informal economy with the cacao, which will be sent to the other countries. Youth is working in formal sector, and they have 0.5 hectare, and they work there in order to be able to pay their studies at the university. The president of Peru does not give this example. For instance, last year there were 27 deaths due to the protest from the native peoples. Why did they protest? We do not want to have death, people, and blood shedding. People want to have peace. Why? Because there is mining activities which pollute their life sources, and these are damages which have not been offset by others. Therefore, people are protesting. How can we get development activities in Peru if there's not an inclusive process going on? In a second place, these lands which currently are in Amazonia will be given to the state, and the state sells them by tendering them to these large farmers. What will happen with the small landowners? What will become of them? So that is the issue which is at stake with regard to how to face the future, how we can get a fair society and how we can get a more inclusive society. When we speak about the smallholders, for instance, in our opinion, we do not want to have a charity. No, we want to have opportunities to live, to develop our country. We want to have opportunities to develop our capacities, and this on an equal footing. And this relationship with regards to fairness, access to information, for instance, with regard to capacities, and we want to base our activities on what happens in Colombia. There is also a tariff on commercial activities. For instance, Juan Valdez is opposed to what we want to achieve. We want to have a tariff of $1 or $2 of tariff on the coffee bags which have been exported. However, this will not be carried out. So what can we do? The smallholders, we have to organize themselves. We want to have an impact, and that's the process which is interesting to us. So in Peru, we have made a slight progress. We have, for instance, organic bananas, and this in a marketplace, that's okay. But when we speak about trade negotiations, it's very difficult to carry out with smallholders. Cacao is being organized also for the smallholders, so small producers, they of course cannot have an individual link to the market. No, they have to organize themselves if they want to have a link with the marketplace. So what happens with politics in these countries when we speak about trade agreements, for instance, what happens there? There's also other issues at stake. When we speak about the so-called developed countries, we are very jealous because you have subsidies for the agriculturists. But in our countries, we get less and less funding from the government. We have not a so-called compensatory system when there is damage caused by trade. And what will happen with the smallholders? These participate in the negotiations, but these were represented and articulated in these negotiations. No, of course, it doesn't happen. We speak about trade and marketplace. This is an opportunity for us because we should not only manufacture for food. No, we have to take into account the future generations. We want to be healthy. We want to focus on our children. So what can we do? How do we get our means and resources? We need to have a proper price which offsets our efforts, and of course, and a price based on fairness. And that is important for us. And that's a challenge in front of us, all of us. We acting as consumers, because on behalf of the consumers, we can make large programs for development and links with the marketplace, and the consumers do very well know how the products come to their table, how much it costs, and how much damage has been made. This is a challenge, and that's important for the smallholders. We have to focus on opportunities and not on charity. Thank you.
I think we're about to, to end the seminar and the debate. It's almost 4 o'clock. You would like to say something? Of course. Go ahead. 2 minutes, max.
No, 1 minute. I think it's a new time. I don't want to glorify internet or computers or communication, but I think they will have a role. I mean, I can talk about 2 cases. I talked about 75,000 women who have been part of the program, of the national program. Finally, they are tied up with the system that they can communicate with the system with their cell phone. Very low quality cell phone. They can see what's happening, who is selling, who is earning, and what is happening. Now, we don't have to have all in one block. They know what's happening in their community, and they know what's happening in their bigger community, but they will know about 70,000. But now, all of a sudden, there'll be some leaders emerging because they are seeing the big pictures. So it was not that easy for someone. Some younger people will take interest, who will be also more efficient in writing and putting pictures. We just got, last week, the farmers movement, MUÑOZ, are working with us. They want their 45,000 members, not 45,000 members to have a little information about their farm. And every 3 months, they want to know what we have produced, what you have sold, to whom, and what is the investment that is offered, so that they can take this information very easily and go to their whatever level, municipality or whatever, and say, you know, are you trying to fool us or what? This is your policy and this is what really is happening. So, but this is like a incident. So one of the new things that will happen in next 5, 6, 10 years, and it is already happening, is the communication, the cell phone, internet, radio, all connection. And I think many people will become cynical, but also many people will become active, because you will know a lot, and you say, look, you know, this is what's going on in the world. I don't want to read the newspaper anymore. But some people will say, no, I have to change this and go on. So, especially the young people. So, if we are interested in this new energy that is coming up, we have to be, I'm glad that this is being streamlined and online, but this has to be communicating all the time, no? So just one point that we have not touched. At one point, we have to talk about poorer we are, less and less resource we have, more need to make the big jump of the technology. The rich people can sit at their home, no problem, but the poor has no way. We have to get up on the technology. So, I don't know. It was not in the agenda, but me parece.
It's a useful addition. Thank you for that. Looking at the idea of this seminar, it was to provoke debate, to really see if we could put some new insights on the agenda related to the whole concept of making markets work for the poor. Just out of curiosity, I would like to ask a few of you to share what they have learned from this debate and what they will bring back home. Anybody, any volunteers who would like to share that? Yes.
Actually, this idea of a value chain, this is the solution to fight against this monopoly of those, back in developing countries. This is the field where the West can play a very concrete and constructive role to create a partnership between the civil society, NGOs, and the farmer cooperatives, whatever it is, including the public sector, including those from the government side, to get them, arrange them on a table to discuss about the issues. Okay, this is something which we have, value chain, and this is something where we can build together. So let's share, together, whatever it is, so to solve the issues. So nothing can assure, our future until we go into this value chain system and to break the monopolies. Otherwise, this will continue, it has been in past decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Willemijn.
Now, what I learned this afternoon is that maybe you can have some comments on government policies and trade agreements, but it's not so easy to be very provocative about the value chain concept. No, I think the value chain concept is still there, and it was not that easy to deconstruct it. And as I understand that the scientific world understands it already, now the rest of the world has to do it still.
Okay.
My name is Edith van Walsum.
It's not working.
Ilaya, yeah. I can talk also without, but you can hear me. Well, I take a different message home, and I rather would like to confront you at the end of this session to really, think, well, maybe well, let me say, value chain, it's a great thing, but it's not the answer to many, many problems. And let's think with and beyond value chains, just like what Jorge was saying, making markets work for the poor. Value chains is one approach, but one has to go wider than that. And I'm a person with half a leg in value chains, and I have a leg in gender issues. And I've worked too much with women to hear from them many stories about, you know, what is their perception being in value chains, being with half a leg in a value chain and being with 1.5 legs outside the value chain, maybe for them a very wise survival strategy, not a negative lack of options. It may be the wiser option in the context that many poor rural women, and not only women but also men, still have. I just would like to put this before you. You may disagree with me, but I like to put it.
Okay, thank you very much. There's 2 more. I think you've started the whole session of provocations, Edith. 2 more people. Vishwadeep.
Vishwadeep, I work with Hivos in India. So when I asked the question, what can markets do to work for the poor, the market said, organize the producers into value chains, and that's the path to emancipation. But going back to what Mr. Sharma said in the morning, is that the reason I think that 200,000 farmers that committed suicide in India, they would not have committed suicide if they were part of some value chain? I completely agree with Edith, which clearly shows that value chain may be part of the problem, but part of the solution, but certainly is not the only solution. I think one of the gaps that we've not talked about when we ask what the markets can do is the issue of investments. I think it was mentioned that agriculture rate in India has declined to less than 2% when the economy has been growing close to 10%. There is a reason for that. And over the years, there has been a decline in both public investment and private investment. So is it fair to ask the markets, would you invest in agriculture? Market says possibly that's the state role. State says we don't have money. But for any industry to grow, if we have to take the analogy of manufacturing or services, it's always the market that has brought in the investments. Maybe the state has made the environment conducive for the investments to come in, but which has not happened in agriculture. So value chain in that context, even if it were to work, I think what the message that I take back, there is no conclusive evidence as of now to suggest that value chain has worked, or if it has worked indeed, that it has got people out of poverty. I mean, these are 2 totally different things. Assuming that it has worked, how many farmers can it work for? 10,000, 50,000, 1 million? I mean, that's an island in when we consider at least 300 million farmers, small farmers in India, and growing by the day because of land fragmentation and all. So in response to what markets can do to work for the poor, we've got one solution apart from looking at the policies, which is value chain, but I have questions in terms of the scale in which value chains need to work to make a difference to the level of poverty that exist in developing countries.
Okay, thank you. Then the last person.
Yeah, it's interesting that the value chain concept has caught on so much. That in itself should be a surprise, because for many years we have been working with macro concepts, and national accounts have helped making macroeconomic analysis very popular, because you can just push some buttons and you have the accounts in front of you. Value chain concept is something that works not with standardized data sets. That's part also of the problem. Yet, value chain analysis is something that has caught on. And I say that's something that we need to reflect on. How is that possible that actually works, and that it also has worked across disciplines? That is a second surprise for me. And I think the reason is that it is an integrative device. It connects different things. And I think what I take from this is that I hope that we can construct further bridges, make use of the ICT, and see to what extent we can also facilitate, here from the north, with further sort of cross-country and cross-continental comparisons that actually serve all in the study of the impact of value chains. But I must remind everyone, value chains is just an analytical tool. It is not something in itself.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for that. I would like to invite Bill Forley to say what he will bring to the next provocation. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is just the first of a series of provocations. So Bill, could you share what you will bring to the next one?
Thank you, and thank you for such a great participation today. Much of the dialogue and debate around the learning network, of which you've heard some of today, will be held in the regions in Asia, Africa, Latin America. But some of it is here in Europe, and this first provocation has been our opportunity to put a fire under the backside of the debate, and I've enjoyed it very much. This is a rolling series, and I think if this is something that you see as having value, I would ask you to pass the information, the links to your own networks, so that we can roll this along and build interest and carry lessons from one to the other. The next one being in Stockholm in January. You can't think of anywhere more romantic than Stockholm in January, I'm sure. I'm also asking the series partners to meet at 4:15 in ISS, so that we can have a bit of a debrief over what worked and what can be improved. You know who you are, who we can have a little bit of a debrief. What I take away from these 3 hours, I want to come back to Sietze's question and the title of this provocation. That is really not to focus so much on the agenda, or the smallholder problematique, but to see where there are mechanisms and modalities for smallholders to shape this agenda. The agenda, as we've discussed, has been one where organized producers can cooperate to compete, to link with receptive and inclusive business, and that those producer organizations and businesses are tilted towards each other around a favorable institutional environment. And what I hear from today is the political struggle for that institutional environment, to tilt it towards agency and inclusiveness. We heard from Lorenzo about fair trade. Fair trade is an institution of empowerment, but it has turned into an institution of power. And so there's as well as a struggle for Lorenzo's organizations to compete in the marketplace, he has to struggle to protect the institution from being tilted away from his members. He has to struggle to make sure that the tax regime, where there's 15% on asparagus and 30% on smallholder coffee, is again not tilted to away from his members. We've heard from Uganda, where there is a very rapid growth in demand for agricultural produce, but there is a community under stress, and the ability of smallholders to meet that new demand is highly constrained by struggles over land, over capital, of distrust of leadership. We've heard from India, again, an area of rapid growth, but where that growth is pulling away from the countryside, leading to frustration, unrest, and potential instability. We've heard from Nicaragua, where there is a favorable policies, cool projects, but a macro environment that potentially can trump every one of those good initiatives. And we've heard from Diego how a political space built on activism, built on political capital, is not much better at the old regime at building economic capital and the old existing needs around quality, production, and entrepreneurship that are consistent whether you have a popular government or a liberal government. So to me, I carry forward that message about the struggle for the institutional environment to make markets work for the poor. And that's my little nugget that I carry through, and I'm sure you'll take your own nuggets, but please, let's roll this series through. The next one is on rights-based versus market-based approaches to development, and whether that's a false dichotomy. And I think that in the depths of the Swedish winter, we can have a nice bonfire of debate there. So thank you all, and thank you also to One World Media for streaming this to the world. This is our first try, and I think we can build on this example. And also may I also thank the panelists from myself and for the chair. But I hand back to you, Carol, to close us up.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think you've given a very good summary of the debate, the different inputs. I think we had a very good debate, very constructive, very interesting, challenging. I will also bring back home some new ideas and insights. I'm not going to share that right now. That will extend this seminar for, again, a few more minutes. As Bill already mentioned, there will be other provocations as well. You're invited to participate, maybe not physically, but then through the web stream you can actively contribute. We've given it a good start. There is the site where you can find all the information. And well, you've seen that the input is being integrated in the debate. I think today we had a number of people participating in the debate, but I think we need to spread the word really to make it more lively as well. Thank you very much for your contributions and wish you a good trip back home. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Project. The drinks are waiting for you in the bar, and at 5 o'clock the dinner meeting